Hello everyone and welcome back to Game Week 2 of the 25-26 Slater and Gordon Premiership. We join myself, Ryan Sipple, once again alongside Charlie McClellan for a really fiery derby to be contested between West Bromwich Albion Throstles and West Bromwich Albion. Let's go through the squads very quickly before we bring you the action live. West Bromwich Albion Throstles have Amy Lee Julian, Amy Wharton, Regan Kemp, Parth Gakwad, Jonathan Davis, Abigail Bolt and Thomas Donaher. Their coaches Pete Westmoreland and Abby Bolt. And for the five-time Premiership champions, they have the following: Harry Beswick, Lucas Chrysler, Chris Gordon, Matt Gilbert, Brad Bates, Ollie Rock, Barris Innall, their coaches Chris Gordon and Colin Gordon. And just why they're in the centre circle, determining who gets kick-off, I'll show you the live league standings. You can see that West Brom, from their 7 games, have 13 points. A win here would take them probably above Leeds, but Leeds would have 2 games in hand. They're currently playing on Court A against Newcastle, a fantastic fixture.
Yeah, very interesting game on Court A. I think Newcastle have had an absolute pelter of a weekend. They had Teesside yesterday morning, a Spy yesterday afternoon. They've now got Leeds. No rest for the wicked for Newcastle. But while they've not got the results they would have wanted, they would have been encouraged by a lot of what they've seen. Well, on this court, West Brom, who started off the weekend in a disappointing way, a 1-1 draw with GBG Knights, perhaps against the run of play, but against definitely predictions. And then there's Throstles. You've got Tom Donaher, Regan Kemp, Abby Bolt, Parth Gakwad, experienced Premier League players. It's a tough game for West Brom. It'll be probably their toughest of the weekend so far, you'd suspect, in terms of calibre of the opposition, certainly. So it'll be interesting to see what they can muster.
Yeah, absolutely. Paul Pearson has the whistle in his mouth, ready to get proceedings underway, and does exactly that. Regan Kemp with kick-off into Abigail Bolt, returns it straight away. Now Brad Bates into Chris Gordon, trying to break the press into Matt Gilbert. The teams as they line up: Throstles have Regan Kemp, Parth Gakwad, Abigail Bolt and Thomas Donaher. West Bromwich Albion have Lucas Chrysler, Chris Gordon, Brad Bates and Matt Gilbert. Matt Gilbert trying to squeeze the ball through to Chris Gordon. As far as Chrysler, picked off by Chris Gordon into the path of Matt Gilbert, who's going to try and force it up the line. Deep. Regan Kemp.
2-1 against West Brom. So a start that you'd expect. These two play each other obviously quite frequently in training and regionals as well, so that they'll be very well accustomed with each other's play style. And you could see from the defensive setup of Throstles that they know exactly what kind of space they need to try and restrict for Albion.
I think with Throstles, we discussed it yesterday, that they secured such valuable wins in game week 1 against Sevenoaks and Middlesbrough that they put somewhat of a cushion over those more jeopardy spots and relegation placements at the bottom. So it's all about picking their battles.
Yeah, definitely. I watched them, I commentated on them against Villa yesterday, Throstles, and They lost 1-0 to an early set piece, and quite unlucky actually in the game overall. They had some good spells, they just couldn't quite create the chance to really capitalise on.
A tough day for Throstles. Yes, there's Lucas Christ to strike towards goal. Ricochets between himself and Thomas Donoghue. It was an opening defeat, a very narrow defeat to Villa Rockets before a 3-0 loss to Leeds, who have been in fine form in game week 2. It ricochets off that right-hand post. West Bromwich Albion are knocking on the door, but 3 minutes in, their defence remains resolute. As Brad Bates ready to take the corner all the way back to Chris Gordon. Switch of play over to Lucas Chrysler. Slightly forced that. It was never going to go through Regan Kemp.
Yeah, I would like to have seen Lucas Chrysler try and play it back across through the gap towards Brad Bates, potentially at the far post. Bates manages to find the gap, and it's, oh, Matt Gilbert. It's just off the post, then put out for a corner.
Yeah, they are putting together some really nice passages of play, but this so far is showing a lot of similar traits to their fixture against GBG Knights yesterday morning. They came flying out the traps, they got that opening goal, and it looked like one-way traffic, but GBG Knights in that one managed to get a breakaway equaliser and secure a point. So they won't want a reoccurrence of that. If they take the lead, they're going to want to maintain the lead. That was certainly the case against Sevenoaks, whereby they won 6-1. So more familiar scoreline for that of one of the best teams that England have ever produced. Regan Kemp into the centre. It's so congested. See Lucas Christ up playing against his former side. But as you've already stated, Charlie, there's going to be a familiarity and an understanding of each other's talents and abilities, just due to the proximity and the sharing of venues and regional leagues and other elements.
Yeah, very familiar. It does make these games very interesting to watch. Also, you think, because obviously as part of the shared hub, some of the shared learnings that they'll have, I think they'd both be familiar with each other's set-piece routines, for example.
Leeds have taken an early lead against Newcastle on Court A. Another huge game towards the top of the Slater and Gordon Premiership standings. At the conclusion of today's actions, as always, we'll be running our Swizzles Awards, where you can vote on your Player of the Weekend, Unsung Hero of the Weekend, Team and Fantasy Team of the Weekend. All details can be found on the WFA social media. As Chris Gordon trying to bypass Regan Kemp, who's doing a good job to keep it in the opposition half.
Well done. All round there, good battle.
Flicked goal bound by Tom Donoghue.
Well done by Lucas Christ to win that kick in. West Brom just lacking that maybe little bit of extra energy that I would like to see from them.
How often have we seen it this weekend, Charlie, where teams come flying out in the first 5-10 minutes and then things really taper off and mellow out?
Yeah, regularly. It's been a feature of the game, especially of Aspire this weekend, where they've been starting halves really well. First 10 minutes of a half, they're really dominant, and then second 10 minutes they start to lag a little bit.
Chris Gordon, central to Brad Bates, over to Matt Gilbert, into the 180. That's a really nice chance. Secondary effort from Brad Bates, cleared by Parth Gatquad. Lovely timing on that 180 from the West Bromwich Albion number 14, but the defence of Throstles matched it.
That indeed they did. Tom Donahue's really putting the squeeze on Lucas Chrysler and Chris Gordon now.
Yeah, end-to-end stuff. He'll do extremely well to find a gap between those two players who have established such a fantastic chemistry in the last 12-18 months. And whilst it's not necessarily the attacking best we've seen from West Brom so far this season, their defence has been pretty impressive. The goals in which they have conceded have just been almost breakaway counter goals from their opponents when they're adopting that brave 4-out approach. But 3 consecutive 0-0 draws in game week 1 is a testament to that defensive organisation and that chemistry between them. And if you assess the West Brom squad as a whole, I think it wouldn't be an unfair statement to say that Lucas Chrysler has exhibited the greatest level of development over recent seasons.
Yeah, he's a really strong central player now, one of the leading ones in the division. Has a really good rapport with Chris Gordon as well. Knows when to drive out with the ball, when to pass, when to sit back. They've got a really good relationship, and if the wingers could strike up the same kind of partnership as Chris Gordon and Lucas Chrysler have, they'll be a really good cohesive unit.
Abigail Bolt. Goal kick. It's such a different looking West Brom side than that of 2 or 3 years ago. Players that have left has forced Chris Gordon into a rebuild. Regan Kemp now pushes it forward. Thomas Donohue attacks that. Abigail Bolt saw the gap, which was desperately closed at the last second. The danger still present. That's heavy contact, that. And trapping of the ball. Appeals from Abigail Bolt, waved away by Paul Pearson. I think he deemed it a 50-50 coming together as Chris Gordon into Brad Bates. Reverse 180. Chris Gordon on the edge. Thomas Donohue nicely across to just fragment momentum momentarily. Chrysler across the court, blocked by Tom Donohue. Chrysler, Gordon squeezes it through the gap, ricochets between Donohue and Regan Kemp. Doesn't make its way over to Brad Bates. He might get possession now if Chrysler can get that ball arrowed over. It's a good game so far.
Yeah,
fairly even.
Very competitive. I guess what you'd expect. As we said, these sides know each other very well. Yeah, very fierce. Following a great game. Good day on Courtby, entertaining. Villa beaten narrowly by Aspire just before this. It was also an entertaining affair.
Full rotation from Matt Gilbert.
Oh, he nearly found that gap. I know exactly what he was going for.
end-to-end stuff. It's Thomas Donoghue into Regan Kemp.
Yeah, Throstles doing really well, not only to just get the ball clear, but actually to hold the territory.
Pickpocketed by Abigail Bolt into Regan Kemp.
Yeah, the issue, obviously, Brad Bates had a really serious injury recently, still playing, soldiering through it, but you'd expect that contact particularly painful for him, so isn't going to be massively strong into the challenge. Of course, who better would know that than his wife-to-be? There's a massive chance! Oh! Great play by Throstles. Fantastic ball across, and Abby Bolt, it looked like for a moment she was just going to tap it into an open goal. Well defended in the end, but West Brom really holding up.
Corner ball. Abigail Bolt into the box, tacked by Regan Kemp. The secondary effort troubles Chris Gordon momentarily, but he adjusts well. Chrysler, well read by Regan Kemp. Now Thomas Donoghue puts pressure on Chris Gordon. Matt Gilbert now trying to break away. Gilbert down to Gordon, cut out by Thomas Donoghue. Doing a tremendous job at just frustrating and fragmenting West Bromwich Albion. Chrysler trying to feint. Thomas Donoghue does well. Matt Gilbert into the full spin, ricochets towards goal, but off a Throstles bumper. But Parth Gakwad, any time he's been called into defensive duties, has been brilliant.
Yeah, really solid at the back, which isn't a position I've seen him play a huge amount, or at least not from the start for Throstles.
Leeds boast a 2-0 scoreline on Court A. They're having a phenomenal weekend. Really starting to click as Lucas Chrysler trying to locate Matt Gilbert. In doing so, that Throstles defence condensed a tremendous amount.
Yeah, Aspire, Leeds and Teesside, the only sides that have maintained a fully winning weekend. Well, we know that's going to come to an end for one or both of Leeds or Teesside, because they face each other in a bit.
Gordon into the 180 of Brad Bates, and he fires it through. Brilliant goal, clinical, just caught Throstles unaware. And they've found the opener 17 minutes in.
Yeah, good finish from Brad Bates. They were just going to have to find, they knew they were just going to have to find something in this game. A moment of quality. Brad Bates provides it, a good goal. Not the kind of free-flowing, moving football that West Brom would like to maybe have scored from. As Leeds are just putting on a clinic on Court A.
Yeah, it should be a fantastic game when they meet Teesside later today, as Brad Bates takes it once again into the 180. You can see what he's trying to do. Switch it over to Matt Gilbert. 2-on-1 in favour of Throstles, because Chris Gordon was just at the top of that triangle. And that will surely calm the nerves, and it now almost invites Throstles onto them. I'd be intrigued to hear, Charlie. Obviously, we have done many predictions around the Premiership, around who we think will perform well, potential champions, based on what you've seen in the fixtures we've played. Do you think Leeds have the quality, not necessarily the quality, but do they have the psychology to really go on and challenge now? Because I think the questions were never around quality, it was how quickly they can gel as a collective. What they've shown in Game Week 2 so far has surely silenced a lot of critics.
Yeah, I was going to say, in terms of the quality of the squad, it's ridiculous. Like, it's such a high-level team that they've got there. Not even just the starting four, the traditional starting four, but also on the bench. They've just got a ridiculous squad. I think it was tactical and mentality that perhaps was concerns for some people. I think during the first weekend I saw that why those concerns were there when they lost to Greenbank late on, and they appeared frustrated at times. But this weekend we've seen a different Leeds, and if they go on to beat Teesside or get even just a draw in that game, then they have to be considered as massive candidates for it. I think they're definitely in for a chance, 100%.
But you're gutted you're not available to call the action on that one.
Yeah.
With responsibility of another cracking game between Aspire and Greenbank.
Yeah, either way, it's one of those where if you're watching Leeds Teesside, you're gutted to be missing Aspire Greenbank, and if you're watching the other, it's a bit of a lose-lose. I'm gonna have to keep an eye on both, and I'm go
sure
back and watch it.
If you're not present at the Lee Westwood, you've probably got both games up side by side. As Brad Bates into the box, over to Matt Gilbert, strikes it goal-bound wide of the post. And that's the last action of the first half. It's been professional from West Bromwich Albion, you say, but not necessarily the attacking, free-flowing heights we've come to expect, certainly in former iterations. Thank you to all that are tuning in. Charlie and I will be back very shortly for the second half. Hello everyone and welcome back to the second half of West Bromwich Albion Throstles versus West Bromwich Albion in Game Week 2 of the 25-26 Slater Gordon Premiership, where you're joining myself, Ryan Sipple, alongside Charlie McClellan for the action live from the Lee Westwood Sports Centre. Just one goal separates the two, which was capitalised and scored by Brad Bates in the first half. A quick, clinical set piece sees them have bragging rights, but they didn't have it all their own way. The question now is, can Throstles spearhead something of their own? Because whilst they were defensively sound and hard to break down, they didn't create a great deal in attack. Paul Pearson gets the thumbs up from the keepers, and we are back underway. Chris Gordon into Chrysler, trying to entice Abigail Bolt forward to then create those overloads. It's typically how West Brom like to play, going backwards to play forwards, drawing their opponents into uncomfortable areas and then capitalising with those overloads in attack. As Chris Gordon back to Chris Chrysler, didn't have the accuracy on the initial ball, so out for a Throstles ball. Give me your assessments from the first half, Charlie.
Yeah, I thought it was a pretty even first half, to be honest. Good goal from Brad Bates, but other than that, West Brom didn't really create a lot, and Throstles were very comfortable at times and created chances of their own. I think they would be good value for a point in this game from what I've seen so far, and see if they can find an equaliser so they can get it.
Chrysler into Gordon. Just to run through the squads: Parth Gakwad, Regan Kemp, Abigail Bolt, Thomas Donaher. For Throstles, Brad Bates, Chris Gordon, Matt Gilbert, Lucas Chrysler for West Bromwich Albion. Completely unchanged from that finished the first 20 minutes.
Quite ponderous from West Brom, this. Doesn't feel like a particularly high intensity game. Very different to what we saw earlier this morning between Villa and Aspire. That was very, very intense.
The pace of this is noticeably slower, isn't it? As Chrysler fires it down the centre of the court to Matt Gilbert. Does just enough to keep it in play. Parth Gakwad's going to be stationary, hugged towards that left-hand post, so Matt Gilbert's going to have to play backwards. Goes to Chrysler, all the way to Chris Gordon. Very central, that. They're just not getting the angles that we've come to expect. They play so much of the bravery and the front bumper pick-offs from their wingers. It does require that initial service. It's Chris Gordon now. Audacious effort, secondary attempt off of Regan Kemp's chair, will go out for a corner ball. Second half of Newcastle United Foundation versus Leeds set to kick off on court A. Fantastic, dominant first half performance from the title chasers. Also live on the WFA's YouTube. That's Brad Bates. Has Matt Gilbert to aim at, finds him, and a beautiful, well-worked goal once again from a set piece, catching Throstles unaware. 24 minutes in, West Bromwich Albion double their advantage.
Yeah, good delivery, good screen from Chris Gordon, and then the finish had to be really nestled in that corner, and it was, to be fair. Good work all round.
I think when you consider both the goals in which West Brom have scored, it's more disappointing from the defence of Throstles rather than really nicely executed set pieces. To take nothing away from the finishing, you do question the initial placement and positioning of the Throstles defenders, and they'll be really disappointed in the manner in which they've conceded both their goals, because they're better than they've shown.
Yeah, and in open play they've been really good and really solid. It's just been, as you said, from those sort of set pieces.
But that being said, we know how important set piece goals are within the sport of Powerchair football. The prevalence of them in recent years has increased a tremendous amount. I would say with a degree of confidence, maybe 50% of goals scored at National League level are maybe win the first, second or third phase of a set piece.
Yeah, it's a massive avenue for scoring, but also it's one of those things where you can really get good at defending them and organising, and yeah, they've not been organised. I know Path, Gatkward and Regan Kemp is not often a utilised defence for Throstles, so potentially a bit of teething issues in terms of knowing each other and understanding each other.
Again, we have to preface to say that Throstles already have a good point accumulation, and they've picked their battles. The games where we want them to see them be competitive, they've managed to get wins, so they'll be tested in their other games this weekend, but I think they'll have more than enough to beat the drop, as West Brom did observe their first change. But Ollie Rock on in place of Matt Gilbert, and he's forced over the line, cleared by Regan Kemp. So close to being their third goal.
Yeah, I thought that was just going to find its way in, but a good recovery from Kemp. Great dribbling from Chris Gordon.
Good pick off from Regan Kemp, just in front of Brad Bates. Keeps the pressure on Chris Gordon in his defence. A little bit of contact is signalled by Paul Pearson. Russell's yet to observe any changes. Jonathan Davis, Amy Wharton and Amy Lee Julian on the bench. If they want a bit of aggression, I think Amy Lee Julian is the player I would look to bring on. A challenge on Lewis Harris yesterday has been widely publicised and discussed at the Lee Westwood Sports Centre.
Yeah, it's, I think, been acknowledged that the officials, well, head referee Jeff Lewis told me that the officials made a mistake. She should have been given a straight red card for serious foul play. It was just, there's no way to dress up. One of the worst tackles I've seen in the time I've been watching this. Well, actually, not one of the worst tackle I've seen here at Nottingham. It was a joke.
I did say on commentary that it's a good job that Lewis Harris is a robust player, which I know has been joked about, but it's a statement I wholeheartedly stand by. I mean, he's a very physical player, gives as good as he gets, but anyone else you'd be worried about their play. But then again, we're raving about the physicality of the battle we've just witnessed between John Boldy and Dave Lewis. That's such a fine line, isn't it?
Yeah. I think the thing that made Amy's tackle so bad yesterday was that there was no way she was going to get the ball from it.
Not so much that, there was no acknowledgement or apology. It was she just drove away from the referee after. So no, this one she'll put down to experience, and I no doubt assume that the officials have maybe had a word with her, as her coaches have. As Lucas Christ up now. Pressure in, they've got that 2-goal buffer, they don't need to overexert themselves. As gets the return from Chris Gordon off Regan Kemp. West Brom conclude their weekend against Villa Rocket today at 5 minutes to 2. West Bromwich Albion Throstles with a tough ending against Greenbank, 4:15. So still some fantastic games left to be contested. We've got somewhat of a considerable gap now between Game Week 2 and Game Week 3, nearly 3 months. So if and where possible, the teams will want to end on a high and then use that 2-3 months to get their cup underway, contest their regional leagues and make sure that they fine-tune ahead of Game Week 3, I think the end of February. Harry Beswick on in place of Brad Bates, puts it over to Ollie Rock.
Yeah, West Brom have got a tough game up next against Villa, who showed this morning that they are not pushovers.
Absolutely not.
It's going to be a really tough one, that.
As Chris Gordon tries to generate the space, closed by Abby Bolt. Absolute dominance on court A. Leeds now 4-0 up against Newcastle United Foundation, which puts them to second in the standings, and they also have a game in hand over Aspire, so they can close that gap to just a single point. But all eyes will be on that Leeds Teesside game later today. What a fixture that promises to be.
It's the most exciting fixture we've had in a while, because obviously you know what you're going to get from West Brom Aspire, and Aspire versus even now Teesside and Aspire, and West Brom and Teesside and those kind of fixtures, but never seen these two teams or anything close to these two teams play against each other. It's going to be so interesting.
Pick off from Ollie Rock. Chris Gordon there, I'm not quite sure what the intention was. He had two options, high and wide, but went central.
Yeah.
I mean, we've been raving about Leeds this weekend. I managed to catch both of Teesside's games yesterday. They were fabulous. They really were. There's a few question marks around them following Game Week 1. Not hitting the heights we've come to expect, but they silenced the critics with two brilliant wins yesterday. And this morning secured that narrow 2-1 victory over Greenbank as Ollie Rock strikes it in the 180. Thomas Donaher trying to get to the side of the ball to keep it in play, unable to do so. Interesting that Throstles haven't observed any changes as we tick over into 32 minutes.
Yeah, I would have thought maybe they would have looked to the bench, Amy Wharton or Amy Lee Julian. But happy with the 4 out there. Had chances and had good territory in the game. As you just mentioned, it was just those 2 moments where sort of switched off at the back.
Thomas Donaher trying to find that gap. Ollie Rock did take a tap off Ollie Rock's chair. The Throstles come away with the ball. Kemp down to Thomas Donaher, flicked back into the path of his goalkeeper. Now Harry Beswick set away, controls it really nicely, sets it up for the 180 across the box into Ollie Rock, back over to Harry Beswick. That would have been a sensational finish, maybe just overplayed Ollie Rock had he struck towards goal. The angle wasn't overly favourable, but good football nonetheless. All started by that breakaway pass from Chris Gordon.
Yeah, great pass, and then the ball across, the original ball from Harry Bestwick was great as well. Straight onto the reverse of Ollie Rock and playing some good stuff.
Yeah, better football. One into the reverse in Ollie Rock. Harry Bestwick's been bright since his introduction, as has Ollie Rock. Ollie Rock over to Chris Gordon, back to Chrysler, fires it down the centre of the court, quickly captured by Chris Gordon. Harry Beswick, pick off over to Ollie Rock, who returns the favour, or certainly tries to. It's trapped between Regan Kemp and Thomas Donoghue. You saw the ricochet that sent through the Republic of Ireland international, but that's the lengths he's willing to go to prevent West Bromwich Albion's third. Christ into Gordon, just out of play. Substitute signalled. Will it be Throstles first? Or will it be West Bromwich Albion? Looks as if Thomas Donoghue will be leaving the court. Amy Lee Julian will be the player coming on. Ollie Rock and Chris Gordon. We've seen this a few times. Harry Bestwick didn't quite have the angle. It's a really nice set piece.
Yeah, you had to see it result in a goal, but I'm really enjoying watching them do it. It works really well.
I don't recall ever really seeing a utilisation of a set piece like it. Certainly the indirect. It's almost boom boom-esque, but played into the oncoming front bumper of Chris Gordon, and he fires it with so much power and accuracy. It's only a matter of time before that yields success by way of a goal. This is very central, so it won't favour that similar utilisation. Probably into the 180 of Harry Bestwick, which it absolutely is. Fired, goal bound, blocked by a very stationary Regan Kemp. 36.5 minutes played. West Bromwich Albion Throstles 0, West Bromwich Albion 2. Chris Gordon patiently lets that roll back. Chrysler caught in two minds there, which just gives possession back to Abby Bolt. A little bit of contact, waved away, probably the right decision. Good work from Lucas Chrysler. Ollie Rock is trapped in that corner. Vacates just in time. Keeps the ball in. Chris Gordon down the touchline. The only clear option. Didn't quite have the angle to generate the return pass. Chrysler into Chris Gordon. Back to Chrysler. Again, really nice football, but well saved by Throstles. I think on reflection, West Bromwich Albion will be happy with this performance.
Yeah, I think they will. Yeah, they've played some really nice stuff.
I think when you consider the impact of Harry Bestwick and Ollie Rock, it will please Chris Gordon, because relatively speaking, certainly compared to Brad Bates and Matt Gilbert, they're less experienced with regards to this system and the way that West Brom want to play.
Yeah, I think they have.
And he's got his goal. Harry Bestwick, absolutely fantastic. Just as we're talking about the impact of those substitutes, they find the opener. It is at the third phase of that set piece, put on a plate from Lucas Chrysler, and Harry Bestwick underway. Fantastic finish.
Yeah, good finish, good goal all round. And yeah, they've had a really good second half, West Brom. First half was probably not the best performance. They wouldn't have been massively happy with it, but in the second half they've taken more control. They've played a more recognisable West Brom style of football and really taken the game to their neighbours. And yeah, it's been a good second half performance from West Brom, and they'll end up with an accomplished win.
into the final minute. Can I push you for a player of the match?
It's a tough one, this. I'm actually really stumped because it's been a very good all-round performance from West Brom. I feel like all the wingers did their jobs pretty well. I'm actually really struggling. For that last pass, and because he's been an ever-present in the game and he's had some really nice moments, I'll give it to Lucas Chrysler.
Yeah, completely agree. He's been fantastic and he's played in every one of the 4 positions. I just want to give a huge shout out to Harry Beswick. I believe that's his first goal at National League level with West Bromwich Albion since his transfer from Sevenoaks. So a huge moment for him, his family, his confidence, and he's looked incredibly sharp. A lot of positives to take from this one as we tick over into additional time. I'll bring up the live league standings once Paul Pisson blows the whistle to conclude proceedings. Leeds still 4-0 up on court A over Newcastle United Foundation. Across the box, Habib Bolt just cuts off the lane to Ollie Rock. And that will be the full-time whistle. Great performance from West Brom, who grew in confidence and managed to secure a brilliant 3-0 win. As promised, the live league table, you can see that West Brom from their 8 games have 16 points, so they're still in amongst that pack above them, but they have played a game more than the 2 teams above them. For Throstles, 7 games played, 6 points acquired, but 6 very valuable points, certainly when you consider GBG Knights, Sevenoaks and Muscle Warriors, who are all really struggling in the 25-26 season. A huge thank you to everyone that's tuned in, to myself and Charlie. Next up on Court B, Muscle Warriors versus GBG Knights.